So I'm John Kane, and I welcome you to Let's Talk Native on this Tuesday, November 12th. While this program may not provide a path to spiritual enlightenment, we do encourage and in some cases start conversations. We don't do prayers and we don't do buffalo speeches. We take a tough look at history, oppression, and survival. We talk about culture, the arts, politics, and identity, and we may step on a few toes along the way. But our real goal here is to bring people together by breaking down what separates us. We will take on the false narratives and provide critical thinking to all that is heaped upon us, and we do it all right here from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. So let's talk native. But first, let me remind people that our audio streams at www.letstalknative.com. We stream live video of the show on our Facebook group page or pages via Facebook Live. Our shows are available as podcasts on your favorite podcast platforms after our broadcast. And we take the video from our Facebook live stream and we post it up on our YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. I'm the host, and I'm assisted by Jake Proud, who is managing our video and our sound. Let me get into it. Look. You people, who knew, right? Who knew that you people has finally risen to the level that most of us have recognized the use of this expression for years, but it's finally risen to the level where somebody can not only be called out on it, but actually be fired for using it. Don Cherry, famous sportscaster on the Canadian side, Hockey Tonight. I mean, look, if you have any familiarity with Canada, you know who Don Cherry is. Well, Don Cherry is a former sportscaster at this point, and he was canned for going on a rant. Well, I guess let me back up. Yesterday was Armistice Day in the UK. It's Remembrance Day in Canada, and in the United States they call it Veterans Day. It's all the same thing. It's about romanticizing war. Well, Don Cherry took particular offense that everybody doesn't buy poppies to support veterans. And they're not even real poppies. I think they're these paper thing. I don't know. Anyway, these little emblems anyway that you donate, you buy them, and it puts money towards some sort of veteran services. Or I guess at least that's what it does on the U.S. side. I assume it does the same thing on the Canadian side. But Don Cherry goes on a rant, and he basically says those who don't. I mean, he starts saying you people. You people won't put up a buck for a poppy, but you enjoy the milk and honey of Canada. I mean, and he's basically talking about just the other, and the other could be anybody. It could be immigrants, it could be, migrants, it could be people of color, or all of the above. Don Cherry is an old white guy, who, because of his age, feels like he can get away with saying anything. It's kind of like old people. Old people can speak what's on their mind. Yeah, but you don't necessarily get a chance to do it on national television. So anyway, Don Cherry got canned for doing his racist rant, where and again among the vernacular to use is this "you people" thing. Now, for Native people, that's a step up from being called dogs. I mean, but make no mistake about it. When you hear a white man say "you people," he is referring to anybody who's not white. And and he's not even talking about class or anything else. He's talking about anybody who's not white. And so that's what Don Cherry was talking about. But I got to tell you, and I did a post on Facebook today, and I'm going to reiterate some of that. I don't think people can appreciate how often Native people hear the "you people" line. I mean, I remember Archie Bunker using that expression with the Jeffersons, right? I mean, so you knew in Archie Bunker he's talking about black people, right? But and again, fictitious character, really kind of recounting real life experiences. A great show. I thought they exposed an awful lot. But you could laugh at a buffoon like Archie Bunker, but there are people. I mean, I have allies, white allies, the people who listen to my shows here and in New York and in other places, who still want to characterize me or the people that I represent. Not that I claim to represent anybody, as we're just too angry. You people are too angry. You people always want to play the race card. The whole "you people" thing We get hit with that constantly. Oh, you people are always living in the past. Why don't you just put the past behind you? Get over it. You people need to get over it. I mean, we hear this thing constantly, and nobody gets fired for saying stuff like that to us. And the crazy part is Don Cherry gets fired for using the expression "you people," even in the wake of Justin Trudeau being essentially reelected for all intents and purposes as Prime Minister of Canada, in spite of all the blackface stuff and everything else. So it's again, I don't know how you weigh this, weight, racism. I don't know. I mean, and this is where I always come back to this whole. The fact is that racism is not a right thing or a left thing. It is a white thing. And I know white people lose their mind every time I say it, but it just is. I mean, and it kind of relates back, and I've got to bring this up too. It relates back to even the stuff that I talked about on my last show about what the Senecas are going through with this battle with the state. I mean, when you understand the privilege, and how much is skewed towards white control. I mean, the laws, the enforcement of laws, the creation of laws. So, to legislate, litigate, adjudicate, negotiate, all of that stuff. I mean, all of that stuff is being done by white people. And the rest of us are supposed to understand what they're talking about. And this isn't just about English, because there's an awful lot of manipulation that happens. Again, what does you people mean? I mean, when you understand where this stuff comes from and what is loaded in the language, you can't just try to break down language literally. There's intent and there's inflection. There's all kinds of stuff. And look, we've been on the receiving end of a lot of vitriol over the millennia, over the last couple hundred years. So we know it when we see it. Now, when white people get offended because we say, well, that's kind of racist, or we lay it all out there, they take offense to it. Oh, why has everything got to be about race? Well, I got to tell you, because you guys are sitting in the white privilege spot. And you've created the systems that protect that privilege. Now, look, Don Cherry's going to have people surrounding him, just like Donald Trump. Doesn't matter how racist the thing he says. He's going to have tons of white people supporting him. Every time somebody gets in the slightest bit of trouble for doing something really racist, somebody puts a GoFundMe account together or a campaign together, and they load these people up with money. They get rewarded for the racism, whether it's the woman who wouldn't, or bigotry, the woman who wouldn't marry the clerk who wouldn't do marriage licenses. Damn, they did all kinds of GoFundMe pages and got her a ton of money. Not just for her defense, to live large. The guy who sliced over, you hear this one? The guy who sliced open the naked baby balloon of Trump down in Alabama. Oh, there's a big GoFundMe campaign going on to throw money at that guy. And he said, damn, I'll do it again. Look, there is such support for racism that even if you do something blatantly racist, these guys are gonna be supported. But if you do something that somebody says, oh yeah, we're just trying to be overly political correct, or political correctness run amok. That's the one we always hear every time we talk about the mascot issue or anything else. Look, I have no sympathy for Don Cherry. Look, he was clearly trying to express, and he does a sports show. I mean, his show is about hockey. So why is he going off on this whole tangent about poppies and you people who want to live the benefits of Canada but won't pay a buck for a poppy, for crying out loud? There was no requirement for him to get off on his political rant. He did so, and the fact that he's 85 years old, he shouldn't have put out to pasture a long time ago anyway. So look, anybody who's crying about Don Cherry, for crying out loud, don't. And you know what? It is really time that people are held accountable for so much of this, this rhetoric and so much of these words that may on its face may not seem to be hateful. But anytime that you can cast somebody else out as not just other, I mean, look, I do it all the time. I try to say that Native people need to stand up for our autonomy and our distinction, and so, I do it all the time. But I'm not trying to suggest that we need to do it because we're better than anybody else. I think the whole thing about understanding your history is to, one thing, be proud of the fact that that we as a people have been able to survive 2 centuries of genocide just at the hands of the Americans. Forget about what we went through with the Dutch and the French and the Spanish and everybody else. Germans, all of them. But we should be proud of the fact that we have endured. Now, that's not to say that we haven't. There hasn't been a cost to it. Look, we've lost plenty. Assimilation is it's an infection, and we're all infected at some level. And so when I talk about decolonization, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Decolonization isn't all of us being in one mass at the same place. It's about trying to get on that path where we're starting, where we begin the process of decolonization, or we are farther along perhaps in the process of decolonization. The idea of untangling ourselves from the systems of oppression. Now, I'm not saying we all need to be at the same place, nor am I critical of those who may be farther ahead than I am, perhaps, or the ones who are just starting off. I think we need to be more inclusive. We need to be more embracing of those who are willing to at least begin a process of carving out our distinction and autonomy. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying it because I want to be a subset of Americans or a subset of Canadians. No. I just want to maintain who we are. I want to maintain an identity. Not even just, I think that I'm past the idea of reclaiming an identity, although there is some reclaiming that has to be done. So no, I'm not trying to launch us as a superior being. That's not really where I'm going here. And as I sit here and oftentimes can ramble on about a subject, I don't want anybody to think that I think that I'm smarter or better than anybody else. But I will tell you, I think about these things a lot. And sometimes being wrestling with this stuff. And look, I've known people who have been involved in the resistance, as it could be called, for 30, 40 years. And it is tough to do this for a long period of time. And you can burn out. You can not only burn out, you can be, I guess you can lose your way in it all. You can become obsessed with it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I recognize that there are probably lots of conspiracy. I never buy into the grand conspiracy thing. I think I think human beings are too faulty to ever pull off anything that's even close to a grand conspiracy. I think there's a lot of little conspiracies. But I don't get obsessed with this stuff. I really don't. And while I am really, really concerned about what the future is going to hold for not just humanity. But I get, I think the most vulnerable people are the ones that I'm first and foremost concerned about. And of course, I'm concerned about the people who are closest to me, my people. Not because, not because again, my people are I think that are better, or deserve more. It's not about that. It's that these are the people that I care about. So I'm concerned about climate change. I'm concerned about economic, collapse. I'm concerned about social unrest. Damn, Evo Morales, president of Bolivia for over 14 years, and gone, taken out in essentially a coup backed by. Again, backed by who? The United States, Canada? You can draw the line right down racial lines between the whiter people and the darker people, the European mindset and the indigenous mindset. first indigenous president, in the world, basically, for all intents and purposes. And he represented the indigenous population of Bolivia. He had some success, and of course, like with any economies that are tied to the global economy, he's had his failures. But look, it's easy to get frustrated and lose hope. But I guess it depends on what you're hoping for. I mean, I don't think that people should stop having children. I don't think we should get to that place where we say, I don't want to bring another child into this terrible world. Look, I think that we all have a responsibility to try to improve things. One of the reasons I talk about racism is to expose it and call it what it is. And why? In the hopes that we can eradicate it. Will we ever completely eradicate it? No, probably not. There's always going to be certain biases that people have. But again, there's a difference between, discrimination, prejudice, and racism. Racism isn't just about believing that you are superior. It's about creating a system that supports one group over another to ensure a certain superiority over people. If we can get rid of that, people can believe they're better than me all day long. You can believe it is one thing. But when you have the whole system skewed your way, when you have the white arbitrators, you have the white judges, you have the white lawyers, you have the white legislators, you got the white president, you got all these people who are building a system that's going to ensure, white privilege. Well, that's a problem that I have. I don't care. I mean, personally, Donald Trump can believe he's better than me, and doesn't matter to me whatsoever. But if you've got all the power, to take me out, I'm not really worried about Donald Trump taking me out. I mean, I don't want to sound paranoid here, but I mean, I guess that's my whole point. We have got to confront this stuff, and we got to stop looking the other way. I mean, I know a lot of Native people love hockey, and a lot of Native people probably love Don Cherry. And I got no use for it. And look, if you're willing to look the other way on racism, then you're complicit in it. And even if you're not white, you can be complicit in white privilege. You can help bolster that privilege that you yourself won't have. Maybe you're hoping you'll get a little bit of shine from it or something. I don't know. But we've got to confront this stuff. And I'm not saying we got to, wage war. I mean, this isn't a violent insurrection. A lot of what I talk about is the stuff that we need to do. We need to take care of some stuff internally. I mean, we got to support each other. When getting back to the whole you people thing, when I get people offering me constructive criticism, oftentimes you can hear the racial overtones in the criticisms. You sound too angry all the time. You're always too negative. Well, for one thing, I try to lighten up, even when I'm talking about I'm talking about death sometimes. I'm talking about child abuse. I'm talking about genocide. It's that's a little bit hard to put too much levity to, but I try to. But I'm also not running around looking for the first person I can lash out at. No, whether it's on the mic or whether it's in my life. I mean, if I come across as an angry person, well, here's the thing. There's some problems that are not properly addressed. And part of what I'm trying to do here, I'm not trying to make people feel good about themselves. I'm not trying to talk about forgiveness. I'm not even a big fan of the whole forgiveness thing. So no, I know there's all kinds of religious stuff that gets, tied in with the whole idea of forgiveness. Man, it's not my thing. Religion's not my thing. But you know what? I'm not trying to give people a pass and say, oh, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. No, this stuff is not okay. Part of the reason that I do what I do here is not just to shame and criticize white people. No, that's not what I'm after here. I'm trying to empower our own people. But in the process, I might have to shame a few of them too. And not because I think I'm above it all. I mean, I think we all have to carry a certain amount of responsibility to the things that we have not given, proper attention to. But by telling some true history, so we don't fall into the whole thing, oh, Abraham Lincoln was such a good guy. No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. He signed the execution order for the Code of 38 in Mankato, Minnesota. And no, George Washington, I don't care if they're teaching my 5-year-old grandson that George Washington was a good guy. He wasn't. Now, is this about trying to be angry? I had one of my good friends from high school said, did you like any of these people? I was funny. I don't even know most of these people. All I'm saying is that if we're going to be taught all of these sweetness, details about somebody, we should know what they did that wasn't so sweet. We should know that Thomas Jefferson was the main president behind the removal, the Trails of Tears, and all of that stuff. We should know that. So we don't get sucked into this idea about these guys being our heroes. They aren't our founding fathers. And you know what? Even to the extent, and I get into it all the time. And people want to say, well, the Hiawatha Belt is was the foundation of the U.S. Constitution. You know what? I'm sorry. I don't necessarily buy into that. When Ben Franklin was trying to pitch the idea of forming, a new nation out of 13 colonies, he said, how is it that 6 nations of ignorant savages could form a union that seems indissoluble? Yeah, ignorant savages. That's what Ben Franklin. That's how he described us. And then and the crazy part is, our own people want to feel flattered by that. Yeah, but see, he recognized that we had a constitution, that we had this and we had that. Yeah, but he was calling us ignorant savages, for crying out loud. And what he's saying is, how could ignorant savages do this when white men of English descent, who have so much more to gain than a bunch of ignorant savages, how is it that we can't do what they've done? I mean, he's trying to shame his people by saying, look, at these animals could do it. Why can't intelligent men do it? I don't know. Maybe if our people want to consider those things as backhanded compliments, I guess have at it. But I got to tell you, I don't view it that way. So when I hear, the quotes from Washington or Jefferson or Franklin or any of them, all the way up through, I mean, including, Reagan, and even some of the lip service being paid by Barack Obama as he goes to Cannonball to celebrate Flag Day, saying, oh, we need, in the words of Sitting Bull, we need to build something for the future of the children. And what's the legacy of Obama's building something for the children of Lakota territory? The Dakota Access Pipeline. Yeah, thanks for that. So, look. I could go through all 45 presidents, and it is my plan to do that. One day I'm going to spend the time and put out a book about Run the Gaius, the town destroyers, all 45 of them, and I'll use their own words. I mean, I won't even have to necessarily voice an opinion. I'll let their own words speak for themselves. But the reason I think that's important isn't just to criticize and to create vitriol between Native people and white people. But white people have to own that history. And if you deny it, or you say, well, you got to put stuff in the past. Never forget 9/11, but don't bring up Sand Creek, and don't bring up Wounded Knee Massacre. Don't bring up the Dakota 38. Don't bring up residential schools. No, I'm going to continue to talk about the fact that there is, and not just has been, but is an American genocide that continues. And I want to empower my own people and the people who are willing to at least listen and question me on it as well. But the people who are willing to listen to say, yeah, it's really something that we survived this, and that we still have a foundation to build ourselves upon. Look, we're not talking about world domination here. That was never our thing. That's, white people have been talking about Alexander the Great. I mean, Julius Caesar. I mean, look, people have been talking about Hitler. I mean, world domination is that's not our thing. But neither is living under the boots of somebody either. So we're gonna continue. We're gonna continue to bring our past forward and bring it into the future. And the only way we can bring our past forward is because, look, I can be very, very critical of Native people over the last 7 generations who some we've lost land, we've lost language, we've lost all kinds of things. But you know what? We still hung on to enough that here I am doing what I'm doing here today. So I want to make sure that I put the context of the failings of those last 7 generations. I want to put it into context. And so people understand what it is that we've gone through. You people. Well, I'm not as concerned about you people. I'm more concerned about my people. Look, we're at the bottom of the hour, so we'll take a break and we'll come back with a little bit more. I do want to talk about some of the put a little finer point on what I think are strategies that the Seneca Nation could employ in their battle with the state going forward. Not saying they're going to take that advice, but I just want to throw it out there, articulate it one last time. I don't want to drive it, kick a dead dog on this thing, but we'll talk about it when we come back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native.
Razor wire cut you to the bone, son. It can make meanest long for home, and it's a crying shame. Just yourself to blame. Every morning when the sun comes up, you stand in your cage like a little pup. You wait for the man to turn the key. You step outside to greet. I raise a wife. It's a crying shame. Late at night when all the killers are down, hear the teardrops splashing on that concrete ground. It's a dangerous game. They cry for their own pain. A razor wire flame. Watch it gleam on that sunny day, tempting you to try beyond your way. You try to swagger like you don't care, but you're always under that wire's glare. A razor wire, it's a scary game. A razor wire's game. Time all alone, thinks of her babies and she cries for home. Worst kind of pain a baby mama's pain. Squeeze the bars till her hands turn blue. Razor cuts, raindrops in two. She hears the screams from down the hall. It's clicks back to the world of hell. Razor wire, it's a lonely game. A razor wire pain, giving me no pain. Razor wire pain, working on my brain.
All right, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses for supporting what I do here. I also want to thank Eric White and ERW Enterprises and my good friends at Grand River Enterprises and Native Wholesale Supply for, again, these are the main sponsors that allow me to do this every single week, make my trips to New York to do my show in New York City, which I will be back, by the way. I got to mention that now before I forget. This Thursday, I will be back in New York. The first time I will be back in New York to do a show in a month now because of some of the debacle that's been taking place down at WBAI in New York City. So I will be on Thursday. I think I'm on for 2 hours. I think I'm on for 3 to 5, but I know I'm on for 4 to 5, but I think I'm on for from 3 to 5 on Thursday in New York City on WBAI. You can listen to us on WBAI.org. Of course, we will stream that show live on our Facebook group pages. And of course, we'll put it up as a podcast and a YouTube video afterwards as well. But again, I couldn't do all this stuff if I didn't have some dedicated sponsors who do something either every week or every month to make sure, a reliable stream of revenue that allows us to do what we're doing here. And, even now, Jake and I are going through products, and we've got the plans to do some more, not only YouTube videos, but looking at trying to do a full-length documentary. So we're trying to do everything we can with the resources that we have here and expanding some of those resources so we can do more. So, again, couldn't do it without the support that I get. And, of course, there are a few other people who from time to time help out. I mean, I've had everything from transportation problems to, a couple of big buys that I've had to do. And it's easy for me to go back to, to RJE or ERW or Grand River Enterprises or some places where, try to always go back to that well. But I usually try to reach out to other people. And a few people step up when I really need it. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate all of you who share the shows. We crossed over to over 500 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So I put a call out, said we were one away, and now I think we're like 508 or 509 subscribers. We're still a ways from 1,000, but we're getting there. On my Facebook Let's Talk Native Facebook group page, I think we're only about 20 people away from cracking 7,500 on the membership there. So, we continue to grow this thing out. We lose a few people from time to time, whether they, bail on Facebook, and can't blame you if you do. But we lose a few people, but we seem to be growing this thing out, and every week our numbers go up a little bit higher. We are far from an internet sensation, but that's not what we're really trying to do. Like as I was saying before the break, I want people to understand some of this real history, the true history, understand what historically we as a people have endured and survived. But I also think it's important that white people realize that if we throw a little shade at you, there's a reason for that. There's a history here. And if you want us to respect you, you've got to earn that respect, because historically, you haven't done a very good job with it. So if you're wondering why people of color, maybe don't hold white people in the highest regard, well, you still got guys like Don Cherry referring to us as you people. You still have, people going in blackface. Justin Trudeau. I mean, people on the U.S. side. We see this. You're still mocking us at football games, for crying out loud. So now we still have some animosity, not just from the historical past. Every day we experience. We got the New York State still trying to squeeze another $1 billion out of the Seneca Nation. And there's my segue. So let me get to it. I did the last show. I kind of explained that a judge refused to vacate the arbitration ruling. That would essentially try to force the Seneca Nation into continuing to pay a revenue sharing payment. And force them to pay it. So it's not really sharing. Now we're saying, no, you have to make this payment, and you're going to make it because we're claiming we're giving you something, and we're charging you $1 billion through 2023 for it. So again, it's a terribly oppressive situation. But I think there are some options. I mean, and so the way the governor's office and others have tried to characterize this judge's ruling is that the judge said the Senecas have to pay. Well, he didn't exactly say that. He refused to vacate the order, and he did affirm or confirm the award that the arbitration panel had set. I guess you could say that he's saying the Senecas have got to pay it. But I think there are essentially three options not to pay. And of course, the other option is just to pay, put your tail between your legs and pay it. And then, deny your people $1 billion worth of gaming revenue. And that's entirely possible. That may be the realistic choice that the Seneca Nation adopts. So I don't say realistic, but it might be the path they take. And I guarantee you, their white lawyers are going to say, just pay it. Because you know what? That's what they're saying all along anyway. They never really had what I would say is a full commitment from their own legal counsel to fight this in the way that it should have been. And if they did, then they really suck at it. But here's the thing. There are some options left. For one thing, the Seneca Nation went into federal court asking something that was a pretty heavy lift. They asked the judge to vacate an arbitration ruling that under the terms of the compact that Seneca's entered into with New York State, they couldn't do. There's no provision in the compact that says if you don't get a ruling you like, you can go to federal court and have it overturned. It was non-appealable, according to what the Seneca Nation entered into with New York State. And of course, that's what the judge said. The judge says, well, you guys agreed to this. This is the process. You're asking me to do something that's outside the process that you agreed to. I won't do that. So, what process was there beyond arbitration? Well, there is another part of it. I mean, if the Senecas didn't pay, in spite of the arbitration ruling, then the state would have to bring the Senecas, or the state had the option to try to force them to pay by bringing them into federal court. Not the Senecas bringing the state in, but the state bringing the Senecas into, again, the Western District of New York federal court. So if the Senecas don't pay, if they continue to set that money aside and say, no, we're not paying, and the state says, well, we're going to force you, we're going to use the terms of the compact, enter the Western District of New York, and try to bring an action to force you to pay. Well, here's the problem with that for the state. The arbitration order ruling used language in there that suggested, and I talked about this on the last show, they said, well, if the Senecas don't pay, yeah, sure, there's ambiguity. Sure, there's no language that talks about payment past 14 years, but it's obvious if they don't pay, then they'd be getting something for nothing. The idea that these two white arbitrators said that and put it in the ruling should open the door if, when they go into federal court to force the Senecas to pay, the Senecas say, well, we want to discuss what the arbitration ruling said. They said we're getting something for nothing. Well, let's talk about that something. Because this is what the Senecas have never been able to really battle out. They did a little bit when they held payments, back prior to 2013, when they held $600 million from an escrow account because the state was basically taking market share away from them. And they essentially punished the state to the tune of $200 million, but then went on continuing to pay. Why? Because as far as the Senecas were concerned, they only had to pay through, a couple more years. They knew they were done in a couple of years. So, well, we'll pay through there, and then we're done with this thing altogether. Well, they never really got into the real mud on this thing to say, let's be clear here. We paid you $1.5 billion over the first 14 years of our existence here as a gaming company, and we didn't get anything near that value from you. And now that you're trying to force us to pay through 2023, there's no question that this is now no longer sharing. This is imposing a fee. This is a tax. And that's illegal. So if that's part of the idea of being dragged into federal court to expose that. And but the main thing is to say, in order for this to not be a tax, the state has to prove that what they're providing the Seneca Nation is worth another $1 billion. In fact, you try to make them prove that what they got already was worth $1.5 billion that they already received, which would have been, by the way, over $1.5 billion. It would have been $1 billion, 1.6, almost 1.7 billion, if the Senecas hadn't kept $200 million from the last dispute they had with the state. I mean, consider that. So they could just simply not pay, and then battle out in federal court. Look, I know we don't do very well in their court systems, but it is an option, and it's certainly could create the opportunity for the first time to really lay all the cards on the table. Because look, there's federal law here involved. The Indian Gaming Regulatory Act is supposed to be the foundational law for the state. I'm not even saying it's ours, but for the state, they are bound by their federal law, and federal law prohibits taxation of native gaming. Revenue sharing can only exist if the state provides a concession that is substantial and quantifiable. Well, then make them quantify it. And it's really that simple. And it shouldn't be an unreasonable request. If the state drags the Senecas into court saying they want them to pay them $1 billion through 2023, it is perfectly reasonable for the Senecas to say, okay, but if we pay that, it's supposed to be based on something that you're providing that is equitable to the $1 billion that you're trying to squeeze from us. So quantify it. Quantify what you're calling this exclusivity, and let's see some industry experts suggest that you're giving me something that's worth over $1 billion. So that's one option. The other option is to go back to arbitration. It wouldn't be with the same arbitrators. It wouldn't be the same judges. But escrow the money and say, look, we can no longer, this isn't just a breach of the compact. What we're doing here with this revenue sharing, now that you're imposing it upon us, is a breach of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. So we can't pay this. We can't pay this because it's against the law. And they could take that into arbitration. And they could try to get some, hopefully some better judges that would say, okay, let's look at what the federal statute is. If you're claiming that this is not just a breach of the compact, but that it's a breach of the federal law, then let's try to get a tribunal to look at that. So they could do that. Now, both these things would buy time for the Seneca Nation to do what has been very difficult to do, which is make the Bureau of Indian Affairs or the Interior Department do their freaking job, which is to assess whether this revenue sharing is legal or not. They are the ones, who can, they're the agency charged with making sure that the states don't violate the federal statute, Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. But they don't do it. And they're not just screwing the Senecas here. The Bureau of Indian Affairs has been derelict in Oklahoma. They've been derelict in New Mexico. They've been derelict in every place that native gaming exists, where the states have been trying to squeeze them. So the Senecas have an opportunity to not only drag this thing out with, if not win in federal court, but drag it out in federal court. If not win in another arbitration battle, drag it out. And all the while be pressing, and maybe, who knows, you get through into another administration, maybe, a new presidential administration with a new Interior Department. You can finally get some people to get off their asses and do their freaking jobs. But, there should be an effort to collaborate with the gaming operations, the native gaming operations in Oklahoma and in New Mexico. These are the ones that have been in the news lately. And there's got to be more. Work with the National Indian Gaming Association, NIGA, and Ernie Stevens and those bunch. Let's put together a full court blitz, not just, hiring a couple of lawyers that are going to guide you through this thing. Do a full court blitz nationally and drive something home with the Interior Department and the Bureau of Indian Affairs and say, do your goddamn job. Now, and the problem is the alternative is to not do any of this stuff. and just pay and just put your head down and take it. And again, I can't, it's not sustainable. As it is right now, the Seneca Nation, because they've been putting this money aside, they haven't spent this money. They've been trying to tighten the belt here. Look, in spite of the success of gaming, the Seneca Nation has gone through periods of dramatic austerity. I mean, a third of their population still lives below the poverty level here. And I know everybody thinks, oh yeah, they're all living large, they're all just rich, living rich off of casinos. No, the state is getting a windfall off this gaming. The rest of this is, the rest is the Seneca Nation trying to provide some basic services, housing. I mean, for any of you who haven't paid attention over the last 100 years, the housing that Native people have been forced to live into has sucked. So the fact that the Seneca Nation is finally being able to be in a position to do more for their people, and that is now going to have to be sacrificed. So not only will annuity checks quite possibly have to be reduced, but services will have to be reduced, or the Seneca Nation is going to have to take on more debt. None of those three things are acceptable if you're paying off the state another $1 billion through 2023. It's absurd. So, I just hope, I don't have a great deal of confidence, but I hope that there's enough people with fight in them on both the Seneca Nation Council and the executives that if they can't find lawyers who are willing to jump into this fight the way they need to jump into it, not the way they've done it, but do it in earnest, then get rid of them. Because frankly, they haven't been that good anyway. So, I just wanted to put, there are strategies, that could be employed here. They could either not pay, let the state try to drag them in the federal court. They could go back into arbitration, and they could use the terms of the compact to fight what is now an illegal taxation under the guise of revenue sharing, and use the system that you agreed to in the compact. But fight it that way, and all the while try to get the Interior Department to do their goddamn job. Those are you could actually do all three. In fact, who knows? If you went into arbitration, you may find yourself with the state trying to drag you into federal court. But you know what? If you lose, I'm not saying we should ever hope to lose, nor should we ever plan to lose. But you know what? Every time we concede, look, even back in 2013, when the Seneca Nation said, we're going to keep $200 million of the $600 million that we held in escrow, you still gave the state $400 million. And you agreed to continue to pay it 25%, even though you took a third of the money. You didn't cut the percentage down a third. So every time we make these concessions, it makes it harder to fight them later on. If you just go ahead and pay this, what makes you think you're going to be in a better position in 2023 when it's time to renegotiate? And I hear some of the noise that's coming out of the legal counsel for the Seneca Nation. They're saying, we should get a situation where we no longer have to renew a compact, where it's perpetual. Let's work out the agreement and we'll just do this forever. That's what that's what the Oneidas did. That's what the Mohawks did. They don't have to renegotiate. So yeah, they took any opportunity to challenge the parameters of their compact off the table. And you're saying you're worried? Because that's what's really at play here. Look, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is whether by standing up to the state says, I'm not going to negotiate a compact with you. That's why they didn't take it head on and directly on, even when they went through this renewal period. I mean, it would have been really easy for the Seneca Nation or the state to say, you know what, we've got a little bit of a language problem here. As far as we're concerned, we don't pay you after this during this next 7 years. I mean, the state could have raised the question, and the reason they didn't, everybody just thought it could smooth right over. Senecas thought we'll just go through and then just not pay them because the language supports our position, and the state says we're not going to raise the fact. We know that the language is faulty, but we're not even going to bring it up. We're going to hope the Native people don't notice that they just keep paying. And if we have to, we'll stack the arbitration panel and we'll get them to rule in our favor, which is exactly what they did. So there are options, and I think the Seneca people have to realize that there are options. And again, there's risk fighting the state, but there's also risk in continuing because, like I said, if you pay them for the next 7 years, what makes you think you're going to be in a better position when it's time to renegotiate a compact in 2023? I guarantee the same legal counsel that's going to tell you to pay, go ahead and pay right now, are going to tell you continue to pay. So who's making the decisions here? Are they Seneca Nation executives or are they Seneca Nation lawyers? White guys. I guess that's where we have to come back to. So I just want to throw that out there. I realize I've done 2 shows in a row on this, talked about this issue, but it's kind of a big deal. I mean, and it's not just a big deal because a lot of my friends and neighbors stand a chance of losing some of their annuities, which are now a monthly payment. It's not just that. What the Seneca Nation has done has impacted every other native territory. Do you know why Oklahoma's trying to push the revenue sharing up to 25%? Because that's what New York State gets. You know why they squeezed the Oneidas who weren't paying anything up to 25%? Because that's what the state was getting out of Seneca territory. There has to be resistance. Otherwise, we just keep being beat up by these people. And you know what? And getting back to the idea that we could lose again in federal court, or you could lose again in arbitration, or you could, fail to ever get the Interior Department to do their damn job. Then this is the other place that we need to continue to fight this thing in the court of public opinion. People have to know the truth here. And, shame, can be a powerful tool. If you're good enough at it to say, look, this is the injustice that our people are still going through. So when I talk about genocide, I'm not just talking about Sand Creek Massacre and Wounded Knee Massacre. I'm talking about the oppression that we still experience every freaking day. The throughway issue. The fact that we have really, really crappy infrastructure for our utilities here in terms of electricity. The fact that even the way the news covers issues. I mean, when we talk about racism being institutional or systemic, it's systemic because of the institutions. That includes the media. That includes government. That includes law enforcement. We are so afraid to draw a line in the sand. We still get caught into the language of whether the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation is in Erie County, Chautauqua County, or Cattaraugus County, or which sections are in which county. Instead of saying, no, it's not in a state county. Our land is not a part of their counties. Our land is not a part of their towns. We're afraid to say that. And why is it? We haven't even gone through the process of changing our addresses. I mean, so we can say the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. No, we're going to put Perrysburg, or we're going to put Brant, or we're going to put Gowanda or Irving. Why? I mean, my buddy Matt, he made the Seneca Nation redact all references to the towns, counties, and state on the deed for his property. I mean, it'd be greater if they just printed it without it being blacked out. But why is that such a heavy lift? Why would in a world where GPS coordinates can define a property boundary? Why the hell do we need to? I mean, if you say that a piece of property that lies on the Cattaraugus territory of Seneca Nation, why do you have to say town of Brant, county of Erie, state of New York? Why do any of those three things have to show up on a Seneca Nation deed? And you know what, Senecas? Look at your deeds. Unless your name is Matt Hill, your deed has all three of those things on it. And that sucks because it's unnecessary. And why do we do it? Because we've been doing it. So we do these things. We get accustomed to complying even with stuff that's not imposed upon us. We do it anyway. And so then when we get to a place in the road where we have something that we definitely need to fight against, we don't feel empowered to do it. There's no question that the Seneca Nation should stand up to New York State. But I'll tell you, and I know people are going to say, yeah, well, we've tried that and we haven't been very successful. Well, I'll tell you, the reason you haven't been very successful is because your lawyers suck. They just won't hold the line where they should. They aren't raising the issues that they should. They think that they understand that law enough. We only have to do this to make our case. No, we have to go way beyond what is the nominal level of proof to win a case. We have to go above and beyond what white people have to do. They should have the higher standard, but it's us that have to go through the higher standard. We have to do more than they do because the system is geared towards them. The system favors them. The newspaper favors them. The TV network favor them. I mean, we hear it all the time. I mean, I was just listening to a show on NPR just the other day, and they had this guy who wrote this book about nationalism. And when the host said, when the colonists were here, they said, well, there were indigenous nations here. He goes, oh, no, they were just tribes. That's literally what the guy said. And, I applaud the host for bringing it up in the first place, but she stopped right there. I mean, she wasn't going to come out and basically tell the guy he was racist. Because as far as he's concerned, nationalism was a white thing that they need, that got created with colonization. And that's on NPR. So you forget about what we're going to hear on Fox News. Look, I know a lot of stuff happening in the world, a lot of stuff happening in the United States that we have nothing to do with. But we do have our own battles that we need to fight. And we should not lay down for them. We just shouldn't. No, we shouldn't do it. Not even for you people. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. I want to thank you for listening. See you in New York on Thursday, and we'll be back here on Saturday. Yahweh.
Razor wire cut you to the bone, son. It can make meanest long for home, and it's a crying shame. Just yourself.